What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Sunday Night Football Pre-Lock Show here on RotoGrinders. Happy to be with you as always. Breaking down another primetime football game. We finally got a good primetime game for the first time in a while. We've got Tampa Bay and Kansas City going at it here in the Sunday night game for week number 4 in the NFL. There's been some crazy games throughout the day. Of course, started with the London game this morning. Which featured a 61-yard double doink field goal miss to end the game. We had some good games throughout the day. My Ravens blew another game. The Patriots and the Packers are coming right down to the end in overtime. It seems like right now the Packers are lining up to try to win that game. Or if they miss the field goal, you're going to have a tie there. So been some exciting games. We'll see what the Sunday night game brings. And it will be held in Tampa. As Tampa was kind of spared the worst of Hurricane Ian. So their stadium is good to go and ready for this game. I am Justin Van Zuiden, a.k.a. STL Cardinals 84. I've got Will Priester alongside me. And, Will, what's going on today?
Nothing much, man. It's been a real good day, man. Overall for props, a real good day for DFS in the prop shop, which we don't really talk DFS, but, of course, guys still play its football. Got one of our subscribers, Mr. Papa Giorgio, brought in about 70K today. So I'd say that was a really good hit there. So shout out to my man. So happy for you. Glad you had some really good success today. And all over the prop shop, man. If they've been hanging with us, running kickers, we've made a great deal of money. So super excited to come on, and let's have people win a few more dollars as we get ready for this showdown slate that is actually exciting. And now that we're saying it out of our mouths, Justin, I feel like it might end in 10-7 game or something like that. I'm just kidding. I don't think it's going to be 10-7. But
well, that's sometimes how it works. Yeah. Of course, if you're watching us live on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. The thummy thumbs blender will tell you, hit the thummy thumbs. And like the show, and we'll give you all the DFS breakdown you need to know here over the next half an hour or so. Well, let's get into it here. If we start with kind of our DraftKings kind of builds here tonight, and we start at the captain slot. Again, you got the salary multiplier on DraftKings and the fantasy point multiplier for that captain spot. But generally, we like the quarterbacks. They are, of course, expensive, but are you starting with Mahomes or Brady tonight?
It's really tough for me because, with Showdown, man, when you get these guys that are the quarterbacks, that have so many weapons, and you may not think Patrick Mahomes has a whole lot of weapons like name value, but he's spreading the ball around. And I feel like that's what both of these quarterbacks are going to do. The only guy on this slate that I feel like could possibly beat me in terms of the captain is Leonard Fournette, just because of his involvement. But with all these weapons back, how much does that eat into his opportunity and what he's able to accomplish? Travis Kelce still has a pretty good market share on his team, but how does he stack up against some of the other guys in terms of the pricing? And I'm not trying to go around the world. There's a point to all of this, and the point is, as much as I feel like receivers should kind of lead the day on a slate like this one where quarterbacks are going to be spreading the ball out, it feels like quarterbacks might be the right play. And believe it or not, man, I might be more interested in Tom than Mahomes today. Tom is old, and he's very old, and perhaps he is coming down off the cliff, as Max Kellerman from ESPN has said for years and years. But with so many weapons, if he has a 3-touchdown game, it could be the 3 different guys, and he's $2K cheaper than Mahomes, about a 2 fantasy point differential in terms of projections. I like Brady at 15K. He feels like a really good captain tonight, because I do expect that this team might be behind. Because I think Mahomes is going to be able to score. I'm not worried about the Tampa Bay defense. I think Mahomes is going to be able to move the ball just fine. And as a result, I think Tampa Bay is going to be forced to keep up. And I do think they can in the grand scheme of things. So Really like Brady at captain tonight. I know I said a mouthful, but I don't trust one receiver to beat me. But the quarterbacks could absolutely terrorize this slate.
Yeah, and you do get a pretty good discount there at the captain spot on DraftKings with Brady. I mean, $2,100 less than Mahomes. That is pretty substantial. I do think, I don't think any of the Kansas City receivers are going to beat you individually. I do worry potentially about maybe Mike Evans being that guy that could do that. Tampa's had a whole lot of injuries in their receiving core, and most of the guys outside of Perryman are active tonight. So that's a good sign for them as a team, but a lot of these guys are rusty. They haven't seen a bunch of game snaps. Godwin hasn't seen a lot of game action this year. So I will have some sprinkles of Evans in the captain, but he's the only pass catcher that I'm throwing in there. I think Evans, Fournette, the two QBs, and those would be your most popular captains for sure. I don't think you need to get too creative here. I mean, maybe if you think that the Chiefs play with a lead, you could go with an Edwards-Helaire or something like that, but probably not the slate where you need to go too crazy with your captain selection. So let's go ahead and we kind of touched on the two quarterbacks. Obviously, Mahomes and Brady are both going to be popular, but the double quarterback lineup, like people like to do that. So let's see if I bring up the builder here, and let's say I put Brady in the captain and Mahomes in the flex. So that leaves me with $5,900 per player. And people always like to play both quarterbacks in cash games. Like, do you think there's enough value out there to make it work with both QBs in there tonight?
I mean, it's possible, but I think you're going to be more optimal if you just have one. I think the one wide receiver you're probably going to trust is Mike Evans, like the most, because he should be on the field. Hasn't been hurt, just served a suspension, right? So you don't feel like he's going to be missing. And he is more expensive than all these other guys, but the projections suggest that he should be fine. The next guy is probably Julio and maybe Russell Gage or something like that. But I think both quarterbacks may suck up a whole lot of your salary. And by doing that, you may miss out on that one extra receiver or running back that has the upside game. So
yeah, you do have to get you probably do need a punt if you are playing both quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's like, I like kickers. So I'm always fine with kickers. I don't mind Ryan Suckup. But, if you're playing both quarterbacks, then I feel like you probably need at least one pass catcher from both to try to capture some of the upside. For me, it probably would be Mike Evans, like I said. And I see there that you were putting in Leonard Fournette as well.
Yeah, you can't do that. That's just not doable.
Yeah, so you kind of got to pick and choose. Like, do I think Leonard Fournette is going to outscore Mahomes? I don't. Does he outscore Mike Evans? Maybe. So maybe you play him instead of Evans, and then you get one of the cheap guys and probably Juju from Kansas City, and hope that Kelsey doesn't have 3 touchdowns this game. That's kind of the route you're trying to go. And I will say this too, Justin, on this particular slate, when you're looking at all of these passing options, like this is a slate for me where I don't really want to play single entry or cash too much. If people are playing Showdown cash, I know people do it because it just feels like there are too many ways for the slate to go. There's too many pass catching options. Leonard Fournette is the stable running back on the slate, so I feel good about him. But in terms of pass, it's just too many options. Mecole Hardman could catch a 60-yard touchdown. Russell Gage could catch a 40-yard touchdown. So many ways this slate could go. So I feel like on this slate, for me, I probably, and I could be wrong, but I play aggressively. I'd probably just split the captain 50-50 down the middle, Brady Mahomes, like just 50-50 even. Those are the only 2 captains I use, and then run everybody else in the flex and let it see how it goes in terms of trying to capture the right amount of upside from each player. Because quite frankly, I can't tell you who that person is going to be, that catches the 60-yard touchdown and has 5 catches for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. I can't tell you that specifically, generally speaking, because they spread the ball around so much. And last thing, you can get all that from our Gridiron IQ tool as well. Just go in there and look, and you'll see like nobody's really dominating market share just yet.
Yeah, they have been spreading around. I mean, Kelsey will get his targets, but it's not going to be, one wide receiver doing all the work for them. And I think, you can start getting a little bit cheaper. If you want to play that lineup with both quarterbacks, you've got Cameron Braid, who's pretty cheap. Hardman's pretty cheap. And then you've got kind of the 4th and 5th receivers for Kansas City if you really want to gamble. I know I did the lineup HQ breakdown with TJ earlier, and he mentioned, with Valdez-Scantling kind of battling an injury, perhaps Watson or Moore get a few more snaps, and they're basically minimum salary. Maybe you take a chance on those guys, and that helps you get in that extra kind of stud. Evans is clearly the number 1 guy for Tampa. Like, how are you handling the rest of these Tampa receivers that are all like just coming back? Gage, Jones, Godwin, like, I don't know. It scares me to target those guys. We don't know who's going to be limited and who's not.
Yeah, I think you just take pieces of them all. Like if you're building 150. Now, if I'm in, and once again, this is why I don't want to play single entry tonight, because I don't need Russell Gage to catch 5 passes for 60 yards and a touchdown. And then I'm like, well, I mean, gosh, I didn't know because I don't. I think you spread it around with each of those receivers. If I was going to lock in one receiver from Tampa Bay, it's absolutely Mike Evans. Like this I know for sure, okay? Yep. There's one guy locked in at receiver, it's him. But for these other guys, I just rotate them in and out. Brady's going to be throwing the ball tonight. Like I don't see them, slowing it down too much. Like the Chiefs should be able to score. So I would rotate these receivers that you mentioned, Gage, Godwin, Cole Beasley. Just rotate them around, maybe even around Mike Evans. So I love Brady at captain tonight anyway. Maybe Mike Evans is the guy I lock into my flex. Like maybe he's like my lock play. Locking in Mike Evans in the flex. And then now I'm mixing and matching around Mike Evans, 50% Brady captain, 50% Mahomes captain. And I should have the upside that I need to take this thing down.
Yeah, I think that's a decent strategy. Evans is certainly the guy that you feel the safest about. And then, a couple guys are going to get there. So maybe you rotate around the other guys. It was Gage that got all the targets against the Packers. I think he'll certainly, be the guy that a lot of people look to. But again, Evans was suspended. Godwin's been hurt. I wouldn't put all that stock into those targets. I mean, when everybody's healthy, they were also in kind of chase mode most of that game. So just take that with somewhat of a grain of salt anyway.
Yeah.
How about these Kansas City receivers? You mentioned they've been spreading the ball around. Is this another, kind of sprinkle them in scenario? Anyone you feel particularly good about?
Well, I'm just going to keep feeling best about Juju until I'm proven wrong. He's really only had one bad game this season. The other 2 games, I think he's had at least 80 yards receiving or really close, 4 or 5 catches for 80 yards. So I feel like if I'm going to stick with one guy, it's Juju. He should be able to have a good game tonight because I don't need Juju to get me a 60-yard touchdown. Like he's going to have 8-yard catches, 10-yard catches, 7-yard catches, and kind of build up the yards. And he's got some yard after the catch ability as well. So I feel best about him in their receiver room. Clearly, Travis Kelce is the number 1 target. He's just at tight end. But I feel best about Juju Smith-Schuster in terms of their actual receivers. Yeah, you're muted, Justin. It finally caught us. We tried to avoid this, folks. We tried so hard.
It happens once an hour, so it happened at 7:00. That's okay. You got me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Hardman for upside I think is fine. Juju I think is probably the safest. You mentioned Kelsey is fine. Any interest in the other tight ends? You got any interest in Brate on the Tampa side?
I mean, listen, cheap tight ends get us every week. I feel like I have to have some interest, and he might be a play that enters into the fold when we've got both quarterbacks, because we will need that salary relief to try to get there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, isn't he 3,600? Justin, I think somewhere around there, 3,600.
Yeah, he's cheap.
Yeah, so see, he's the guy that we may actually need for the relief, and in a double quarterback lineup, I don't hate that at all.
Yeah, he's found his way into a lot of my builds simply because of that price. I mean, you got Noah Gray for Kansas City. If you want, perhaps he can fall into the end zone or something, but that's nothing more than a deep GPP play if you are going like 100 plus lineups. Let's talk about these running backs. We know Fournette is going to get the work from the Tampa side. He's just gets all the carries, and the touchdowns haven't been there yet. The results have been a little iffy, but they face some tough defenses, so not super concerned about him. I think he'll be fine in the long run. The bigger question is, what do we do with these Kansas City running backs? Edwards-Helaire, maybe McKinnon a little more in the passing game. How are you handling those guys tonight?
Yeah, Edwards-Helaire, man. I mean, in my mind, I feel like he should be a guy that's, getting 12 to 13 carries a game. But Justin, that's just not who he is in this offense. I mean, this has been since he's been in the offense. I mean, and he will have some games where he has more carries, but just look at the past couple of weeks. He hasn't eclipsed 10 carries, which is very scary for a running back. Now, he's got some upside, but, Jarrett McKinnon's picking up 4 carries. And, at one point, I think Isaiah Pacheco, he's picking up 2 or 3 a game. And it's out of control. Like, I'm very hesitant to play Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, the one thing he does have going for him is he is getting targeted in the passing game, which is, I guess, helping to offset him not getting the carries. But you really need him to be very efficient for him to help you take down a showdown tournament. Now, he's not very expensive. He's $7,800, so he's not breaking the bank. But I feel like if I had to choose between Clyde Edwards-Helaire at $7,800 and Juju, I think I'd just take Juju, and that's kind of my dilemma with him. He's going to have to score touchdowns to get there, and he can. But Juju, he's going to have enough targets, I think, to get there on yardage and catches. And so that's my dilemma with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't really like him that much tonight in the showdown format. And I know some will argue, well, that's what makes him a great GPP play, because you don't know. Like, he does have some upside, and I get that side too. But, I think I'd much rather almost just get rid of him out of my player pool and save that $7,800 for Juju or Julio or, somebody that that's going to have targets and catches and kind of rack up PPR.
7 carries for 0 yards and a touchdown for Edwards-Helaire last week. One of the strangest lines that you will see from a running back. 0 total yards, but still managed to find the end zone. The stat lines are concerning for sure. I put him in some builds where I'm underweight the Kansas City passing game, and you just hope that maybe they get out to a lead and they don't throw it as much, and maybe he does get that volume tonight, but it's definitely doesn't feel mega safe. So, all right, we know you like the kickers. We got somebody in the YouTube chat asking Bucks D or double kicker. Your thoughts on the kickers and the defenses here tonight?
Double kickers or Bucks D.
They're all kind of in that 4K range on draft.
Yeah, I think I feel better about double kicker today. Generally speaking,
you got to stay on brand here. You got to.
Yeah, but I do. So Tampa Bay's kicking 3 field goals a game this season so far. They're kicking 3.5 on the road and 2 home, roughly. Which, of course, I know matchup goes in that and everything, but that's where they are. Kansas City, on the other hand, is kicking 1.5 on the road and 2 at home. So I think I still feel okay about it. But absolutely, I'd probably go double kicker versus defense in this game. Because defense is high variance anyway. You know, any defense can get a scoop and score if the scenario works in their favor. So I get it. But if you had asked me for this game, I'd absolutely take the kickers.
Yeah, I like the kickers. You should see plenty of sustained drives in this game. Certainly not all of them are going to end in the end zone, you wouldn't think. So kicker props galore. You'll be rooting for those field goals in those builds. Tampa's defense does have some value simply because they're pretty cheap. So if you do need that $3,200 price tag, you can go there, but I would put the kickers in front of them just a little bit. So let's see. Ryan Miller asking who you would start in the captain spot. So we got time. We'll do a quick little recap here. The quarterbacks obviously have value in the captain spot. With Brady being a little bit cheaper, he is somewhat easier to navigate in terms of your lineup building. If you go non-QB, I think it almost has to be, with the way Kansas City's spreading the ball around, I think it almost has to be on the Tampa Bay side, and it's probably either Evans or Fournette if you're looking to go non-QB. But I think the QBs are still at the top, and then maybe Fournette and Evans after that for your captain picks tonight. We can touch on FanDuel here in a few minutes as well. I see a couple questions related to that. If you do have other questions, feel free to throw them in the YouTube chat. No major surprises with the inactives. Rashad Perriman is inactive for Tampa Bay, but everything else, all their other wide receivers are back this week. Again, Mike Evans was suspended last week, and Godwin has been banged up since the first week of the year, but they're all going to be active tonight. Remains to be seen if any of them, Julio or Godwin specifically, will be on any sort of snap count. That hasn't really been disclosed, so might be a little bit of risk with some of those guys. All right. Let's see. Derek asking, what was the DK ownership projection for MVS and Hardman? So right now we've got MVS at 21% and we've got Hardman at 19%. Their salaries are around the same. Projections, MVS does project a little bit better, but I think a little bit more risk with him actually because he's been a little bit banged up. So all right. Dan Janning is asking Brady captain without Evans. That leaves $1,600 on the table. Is that too cute for a GPP? What do you think?
I don't think I can do it tonight, man. With this weird receiving core, like he's the one guy, that's been there the whole time. I don't think I can do it. He had a 25% market share week 1. And 12% week 2 because clearly he got ejected. Like I think he ends up around that 25% mark tonight. I can't see him not being the number one guy here.
Yeah, it's tough to trust those other receivers. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's too cute. Obviously, it's just a matter of pegging. It's going to be the other guys, and even if it's not Evans, like. Is it going to be Gage? Is it going to be Jones? Is it going to be Godwin? Is it going to be Brate? Is it going to be the backup tight end? So you do need a lot of things to go your way. If you're doing like 50-plus lineups, I would certainly do that in some. If you're only doing like a single entry, though, or a 3 max, it's just kind of tough to get there and feel like confident in it. So I'm in the overweight on Evans camp myself. What's your take on Beasley? So yeah, with all these guys active, like does Beasley get squeezed out? I mean, Will, I know you mentioned him just briefly earlier. What do we think happens with Beasley?
I'm not sure. Like I was trying to kind of look at that. So last week, Beasley looks like he was only on the field 10% of the time. Maybe that goes up some this week, but maybe it doesn't. I mean, Evans, Godwin, Julio, Gage, I'm going to assume Godwin plays. I think maybe, what do you want to say, Justin? Maybe 40% tonight, 40% of the snaps. I don't think he goes past 50%.
I think that's fair. Somewhere in that 40 to 50 range, sure.
Yeah, and Julio probably the same thing. And then Russell Gage may end up at, let's say, 50 today because those guys are back now. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, he's not going to – last week he was on the field 83% of the time. That's not happening today, I don't think. So I'm going to say maybe he's on the field 50. Evans is on the field about 75% of the snaps. Beasley was at 10 last week. Maybe he picks up to 20 this week. I don't know if it's worth it because now
that's pretty risky with those other guys back. You just don't know.
Right? Yeah, I don't trust Beasley this week.
All right, Dan is also asking $5 with Brady captain and no Mahomes and using Kelsey as your only Kansas City guy. I certainly think that's fine. You need the passing game obviously to be the way that the Bucs get the lead, because if you are going Tampa onslaught, with Brady as captain, maybe they're not throwing it too much in the second half. But I certainly think that kind of build can work out. So don't hate that. All right, we'll talk about FanDuel here, and but before we do, I know people are asking about some props. Chief, a couple of your favorite props for tonight, and then we'll talk FanDuel here.
Yeah, staying on brand, I am going to take Ryan Suckup over 1.5 field goals made. Going to stick with the long-term data there. They've been kicking about 3 field goals a game, so I'm going to stick with it, and let's hope he continues to make them. I'm going to take Juju over 50.5 receiving yards again. I just, he's done that 2 games this season. This is a game where I think they'll be passing the ball a little bit, so I like that. I'm going to go ahead and take Mahomes over 263.5 as well. I think this offense should be able to move the ball better than Green Bay was able to move the ball, and so I like that one. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, this is an interesting one on Prize. I'm kind of rolling with how things have looked. They've got him at 9 rushing attempts, and he hasn't passed 9 rushing attempts all year. Now, this could come back to bite me if they end up in control of this game. But I'm hoping that Tampa Bay has enough firepower with everyone coming back to be able to get the job done. I'm taking Mike Evans over 67.5 receiving yards as well. I looked at the target props. I didn't see any that I felt like were incredible, and then the reception props, Prize Picks turned into push picks. Justin, I know you don't hang out in prop shop too much, but they've been really getting rid of the half so we can win or lose. So like Jerick McKinnon is at 2 receptions instead of 1.5 or 2.5, So
how do they handle that when you push then?
So if you push, then it's like no harm, no foul. So let's say you've got a 5.
Do they just reduce your prize ratably then if it's like a 10x or whatever?
Right. So if you've got a 5 flex that would pay 10x normally, they're going to drop down to the next tier, which is now 4 for 4, and you get 5x on that. If you get another push, it's going to drop down to the next tier, which is a 3 for 3, which you get 2.25x. So that's pretty much how it works. But I don't like it. I try to avoid it unless I try to avoid the push props unless I feel like the guy is going to go significantly over or under. Because what it also does when it changes your prize level, it also changes, kind of your approach to how you would have run the build. You know what I mean? So I try to avoid him as much as I can. At 9.5 rushing attempts, I'm going to take the under and hope I'm right there.
All right, good stuff. I know that we had Big Hurt in the chat asking us earlier about FanDuel. Again, I think Brady's probably makes more sense as the captain over Mahomes simply because of the pricing discount. And if you build a bunch of lineups on FanDuel, you'll notice the cap gets pretty tight in a hurry tonight. It's actually more difficult to build lineups on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings, which is rare in these showdown slates. Like if I want to roll Mahomes at MVP, and then I also want to get Brady and Evans in there, that's doable on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, it leaves you with 7,500 for your last 3 spots. So it's a little more difficult on FanDuel to get the both quarterbacks in there together tonight. So just kind of caution as you build your lineups over there. So in those lineups, I don't necessarily think you need to play Mahomes on FanDuel because he's so expensive. And so if you go with Brady in your MVP, then, you can get some exposure to Kansas City through like Kelsey, who's 3,000 cheaper. And then that leaves you 9,000 for your last couple spots, which is a little more doable. So any FanDuel takes for you there, Chief?
Yeah, on FanDuel, man, just play the best plays, I think, and maybe find one random or one build that it's like, okay, yeah, I don't think people are going to do this. Like, I don't think you see a double tight end build on FanDuel, or maybe you would. You may see a double tight end because Kelsey's so involved, but I don't think you see maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Leonard Fournette, both quarterbacks, and then a kicker or something like that. Just throwing it out there. I think in FanDuel, if you want to win, you try to get as different as you can with the best plays.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a little bit tougher to get all those studs in there. So the kickers do have some value. And I think the tight ends will be fairly popular on FanDuel. Excuse me. Sorry. Because, Brait is only 6,500 and it's relevant because the kickers are 9K on FanDuel and Brait's only 6,500. So that's a pretty good discount. The secondary receivers like Hardman's only 8K on FanDuel. So, and MVS is only 8,500. So you can make the lineups work, but it is tough to get both quarterbacks in there together. All right. Favorite low-owned flex. Any dart throw cheap guys you're interested
in? I think I was going to say Brait may have been one of them. But I don't think he's going to be as low on the. Yeah, he's at 16%. I think if there's one random guy that could break the slate, and I think this is going to be on brand for Showdown, it's got to be Noah Gray at tight end, right? Like, doesn't he just come in and catch like 2 touchdowns for 20 yards?
3 targets, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's the random stupid slate breaker that doesn't play a ton but comes in and gets opportunity. Noah Gray's had 2 targets week 1, 3 targets week 2, 2 targets week 2. I mean, his snaps, he's on the field about 43% of the time on average. So he's probably that one random guy that comes in and just vultures a touchdown, and we're all frustrated.
That sounds about like what could happen on a Showdown slate for sure. All right. Let's see. We only got about a minute left till lock. I think we've gotten through most of the questions. Again, I think this like the 4th and 5th receivers for Kansas City, Watson and Moore. Like if you wanted a true YOLO dart throw punt, those guys are probably only going to run 6, 8, 10 routes. Maybe one's a deep route and, somebody gets loose and catches a 60-yard touchdown. I mean, it could happen. And those guys are a little less relevant on FanDuel because you don't usually need to go that low and they're not that discounted with 6K being the floor. But on DraftKings, where I think Moore is only $200 and Watson's only like $800, you can, round out your lineups with those guys. And then it helps you fit maybe a few extra high-end plays into that lineup for sure. So, all right. No other questions in the YouTube. By the time this gets around, we will be locked. So 30 seconds till lock. Yes, Chief, reminder. 30 seconds till lock.
I'm good, man. I'm locked and loaded. Locked and loaded, folks. Locked and loaded.
No mislock for Chief. And with that, we're at the lock, and it'll be about time for us to get out of here. So we'll be back tomorrow. We've got 3 days left of the Major League Baseball regular season. So we will have your usual MLB Monday content tomorrow. And then we'll be back for Monday Night Football with 2 teams that are playing tomorrow that I have spaced on who they are at the moment. And so I am stalling for time while I look up to see who plays tomorrow because now it's bothering me. Oh, it's the Rams and the 49ers.
Rams, yeah.
Yeah, the Rams and the 49ers playing tomorrow night. So we'll see how this game goes tonight, and then we'll see what tomorrow brings. So tune in for the old baseball content / Monday Night Football doubleheader tomorrow here on RotoGrinders. I have been Justin. Thanks to Will Chief for joining me. Thanks to Steve for producing behind the scenes while he roots on his Mets, trying to avoid a sweep at the hands of the Braves. Sorry, Chief. The Mets have the lead right now, but it's a long game. Still plenty of time to go.
Long game. Listen, I'm actually okay, man. We're gonna kind of win this series here, and so I hope we win it. Still can win tonight. Steve, you guys got all these offseason acquisitions. you'll be fine in the playoffs. But yeah, we'd love to go ahead and get that bye and sit at home and rest up a bit and see who we get to play next.
And so we'll see how that goes over the next few days. My Cardinals are going to be playing. They'll be the number 3 seed, so they'll be in the wild card round. But we've actually I told my boy that if they made the playoffs, we'd go down there. And it just so happens that next weekend is Columbus Day weekend, so the kids have Monday off school. So we have tickets for game 2 and game 3 of the first round for the Cardinals. They'll either be playing the Padres or the Phillies. So we'll see. He'll get his first taste of playoff baseball next weekend, and I don't know. It's fun. He's becoming a mini me, and that's scary in one breath and fun the other. But so we'll be at a couple of the wild card round games, and then, who knows, maybe win that round and play the Mets or the Braves after that. So in any case, football has locked. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody. We'll be back here with you tomorrow. For Will, I'm Justin. We'll see you later, everybody.